how did we get here first off? Okay, so the express carriers, let's start with them. How did we get to the point where they are charging, and we'll go through some of these amounts, such egregious fees on a low value shipment? And sometimes these fees are costing more than the parcel shipping. Like actually a lot more. Mm-hmm. So how did we get here?
Well, first off, they can use this information, these express carriers, as an opportunity to know how to be competitive, or they can use it, or they can be offended by it, right? But we're just gonna call it as it is. No, but honestly,
we want them to get more shipments.
Absolutely,
we're trying to help here.
Absolutely.
Is it Gandalf, right, in the movie with Frodo? And he's like, I'm not trying to rob you. I'm trying to help you.
Yes.
Right? Did I get it right? Is that
yes, that's confirmed.
That's awesome.
Welcome to another episode of the Decoding Cross-Border Ecommerce podcast. I'm your host, Clint Reed, here with my co-host, Aaron Bezant. Here for another round of juicy, awesome cross-border information around fees.
Ooh.
So to kick this off, Aaron, how get us warmed up?
Well, I'm a dad, so I got to tell a dad joke.
Hold on. Are you an experienced dad though? Like how many jokes do you have to tell? I mean, how many kids you have?
I got 8 kids.
Oh,
so that's a lot of jokes. A lot of jokes. The good news is my kids are good at coming up with their own jokes, so I don't have to do all the work in the house. But here's my joke on today's topic. How do carrier fees stay in shape?
How?
By running up the total cost.
They're pretty good at that.
Yes, they are.
Oh, wow. This is going to be fun. Okay. This is a topic, carrier fees, or fees surrounding the clearance and collection of duties and taxes, right? So carrier fees is a big portion of it, but we'll talk about country fees too. So, but I mean, this has been something that since the day that Zonos has started, it has been one of the most difficult, hard things to figure out and to this day. Right.
Absolutely.
This is not a simple thing.
Absolutely.
So to kind of get us started around these fees, can you frame all right, so we have duties, right? And taxes that are charged. That's clear. But then there's fees. Why and how would you bucket those?
Yeah. So, out there's calculating duty and tax is pretty straightforward. And there's different options out there, but I'd have to say we're probably the only ones actually trying to do a true landed cost where we are actually predicting what the duty and tax invoice is going to be from every carrier, and every carrier does it differently. So if I had to bucket them, I'd start with the most common one you see would fall into, and it's called different things, but let's just call it a disbursement fee. That's probably the most common term. I
would have said advancement, which shows how common it is.
Advancement, right, disbursement. Like, I've heard it called deferment fee. I mean, whatever. All that is when that package is clearing and duty and tax gets assessed, the carrier's broker is fronting the money. They're outlaying the cash to pay customs, so that way that package can clear. And then they have to turn around and go bill that to somebody. Either if it's a DDU shipment, they bill it, or DAP, they bill it to the consignee upon delivery, or they might be able to bill it back to a third party like Zonos or to the shipper. And so for them having to front the money, they will charge a fee. So that's the most common bucket.
Seems legitimate. Yeah, hey, I've got a, Now, how much is legitimate? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yes, there is a cost of doing business there. Totally understandable. Then there's fees that are tied into, there's one carrier that charges a fee for the convenience of selecting that option. That's UPS charges a prepayment fee.
I think it's actually officially called the duty and tax forwarding surcharge, which is I think it's about a $15 fee, at least in the U.S.
From shipping from the U.S., it's $15, and that actually gets charged with the shipping charges. So it's almost like
this is a fee that's charged by UPS United States. I mean, you got to think of these as different entities, right? So UPS Canada, which is going to charge everything in CAD, and then UPS United States is charging a $15 USD fee, for the convenience of billing the duties and taxes back to the United States and collecting it from. But you're telling me UPS is the only one that does this?
Because they do that and they charge the disbursement fee.
Oh, they're charging both.
Yeah, they're charging both.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they'll say, no, we're not the only ones to do it. It's like, look, and there's confusion here. It's like tomato. There's two fees.
They're charging two. Everyone else charges one.
Got it.
So then, really that's your most common one that you'll see by far. Along with that, you do see some currency conversion fees that is basically for them billing in different currencies. So if it's clearing in Canada and the duty and tax invoice is always going to be in Canadian dollars because it's being paid to the Canadian government. But then when you're billing back to, let's say, someone in the US, there's an upcharge on the currency conversion, which isn't always line itemed out in the invoice.
Right.
It's there.
Yes.
It's there. And then you've got, there may be brokerage fee depending on the service level. The ground services, like here in the US going to Canada, UPS ground, FedEx ground, you see those.
And brokerage is very common in high value shipments, not going with express couriers like with just normal freight. There's brokerage charges.
Yep.
But express carriers like to say like it's brokerage inclusive, which is true, right?
Yes.
With the except.
Yes. We'll talk about some exceptions there.
Right.
But I'm going to try to bucket them.
Brokerage fee bucket.
We've got all the servicing of the duty and taxes, fronting the money, and really just clearing the shipment, and all that goes on there. Then you've got the other service fees that they come into play periodically, usually on complex entries. So they'll have a line item fee, for example, if there's a ton of items on the shipment. So it's a lot of extra work to clear each of those, and to assess duty and tax on each of those lines. They'll start charging extra beyond usually five or so lines. And then you've got, if they have to engage with another government agency to clear a shipment because of the type of commodities, they'll charge a service fee.
So lots of touches here. For whatever reason, there's extra.
It's complex. There's a lot going on. And then, and if something gets held in customs and they have to hold on to the package, you'll get things like storage fees. But again, those are infrequent versus the ones that are getting hit really on every shipment that has duty and tax due. That's where the disbursement, the prepayment, the currency conversion, those are going to apply every time. And then you got the other ones that are usually more complex. And then another bucket would be country fees. So this is just government fees. It doesn't have anything to do with the carrier per se, but they're important to understand that they will happen. They can be pretty relevant at times too.
Okay, so I'm going to summarize these buckets. You have the disbursement fee. You have the prepayment fee, right? Mm-hmm. Or, essentially the service fee.
Duty and tax forwarding surcharge.
Duty and tax forwarding surcharge. I guess we should just be specific because it's UPS's fee.
Yep.
But you have a currency conversion fee, brokerage fees, complex entry, and country fees, right? Okay. All right. Let's go through some of these before we do. Because we're going to be very specific about the carriers and what's going on here. A lot of it's just public information. And then a lot of it you might not find on their website, but hey, you'll find it when you get the duty and tax bill back. So this is public information that we're providing here.
Most of it is.
Yeah. Well, when I say public, it's not proprietary, right? We're not sharing any details today that someone can't get by shipping a package into Egypt and billing the duties and taxes back to the U.S. You want to figure it out, but we'll talk about some of these specific examples. Do you want to start with, before we jump into the buckets, maybe the carriers in general?
Yeah.
Or, right, and how their fees work, and then maybe we dive into the buckets a little bit.
That's a good plan. And I think let's start by picking on, actually, you know what? Let's save the express carriers for a second. Let's just pick on everybody else.
Who's everybody else?
All your consolidators. I mean,
you missed a fee. You missed a bucket.
What did I miss?
You missed the COD fee.
Oh my gosh, you're right. Okay,
I'm writing it down.
Write it down. COD fee. I had DDP on the brain. So
right.
Yeah, because that's the other thing.
Because in the other carriers, when you thought about other carriers, I think about posts, and they do charge fees.
Yeah, well, and the express carriers as well. That's the
for
thing.
COD they do. Yeah,
that's the thing that's important to understand too. Is on a DDU shipment, they're charging plenty of fees and usually extra fees, and they're not discounted.
Yep.
Right. Whereas when you ship something DDP, there you can negotiate discounts on some of these fees. And in fact, we facilitate discounts on these fees for our customers, which we can talk to throughout this. But so really the cost of going DDP, you can make that cost cheaper than DDU, which can be a huge benefit for conversion and other things. So let's outside of the express carriers are kind of the biggest offenders when it comes to fees. But outside the express carriers, there are fees. Usually that honestly, the companies that are focused solely on e-commerce, because that's kind of our focus here is e-com shipments. The fees are pretty minimal.
A consolidator, for instance.
It might be a simple 5% of the duty and tax, and that's it, right?
Which would be a disbursement fee.
Which would be a disbursement fee, and you're not going to get hit with extra brokerage fees or prepayment fees or anything else.
And when you are hit with it, you might not be able to distinguish if you were, because it's all muddy. And one of the challenges with the consolidators, though, is they don't give you good detail back. Right. So a lot of times, like
the express carriers don't give you good detail back.
That's okay.
Nobody
gives
you good detail back. I mean, just to touch on that, this is, I used to be in this utopian world where I thought everything was super automated and perfect, and the duty and tax was assessed and all the details were there. And then I started actually living in the real world and recognized that, if you look at a duty and tax invoice from any carrier, express carrier, any of them, you may sometimes get really good details on that invoice. Canada, for example, you look at a shipment to there is usually pretty detailed. Other parts of the world, it might be one line that they just call it duty or customs charges or something like that. And it is duties, taxes, country fees, other carrier fees all lumped into one line, and you have no idea how to break it out. Often you can dig in and look at the image of the clearance docs and try to do some reverse engineering, but some of this stuff is kind of hidden and hard to figure out.
Okay. I know you said the express carriers, and we're going to get to them in a second, but postal carriers. I'm sorry, man. They're pretty egregious on the COD fees.
Yep. Then
it can be like Canada Post, I think, charges $9.95 CAD, and I'm not even picking on the worst one.
And that's not the worst one. That's not the worst one.
There's some like European countries, man, they love their fees.
Absolutely.
Well, and then we'll talk about how all this shit's taxed too. Like, I mean, it all like doubles up. It gets expensive.
Yes, it does. So let's go back to the express carriers then too.
Who you going to start with first, right? Now, first off, none of the express carriers are probably going to be thrilled with the amount of light we're going to shine on these fees, right? This is not fun. Look, they don't love it either. It's just kind of like, how did we get here, first off? Okay, so the express carriers, let's start with them. How did we get to the point where they are charging, and we'll go through some of these amounts, such egregious fees on a low value shipment? And sometimes these fees are costing more than the parcel shipping. Like actually a lot more. Mm-hmm. So how did we get here?
Well, first off, they can use this information, these express carriers, as an opportunity to know how to be competitive, or they can use it, or they can be offended by it, right? But we're just gonna call it as it is. But honestly,
we want them to get more shipments.
Absolutely,
we're trying to help here.
Absolutely.
Is it Gandalf, right, in the movie with Frodo, and he's like, "I'm not trying to rob you. I'm trying to help you."
Yes,
right. Did I get it right? Is that
yes, that's confirmed.
That's awesome. That's exactly it. And here's the problem. And to answer your real question here is, e-commerce wasn't the first thing on their mind.
No.
This was this whole fee structure, all the services. This goes back. This goes way back when it's for the higher value B2B shipments.
B2B.
And
this was designed around B2B.
This is before the e-com cross-border boom.
And the prices were also built around very manual processes, which, to be fair, are still very manual today.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So the evolution for e-com that's where the non-express carriers, you have some carriers that have really sharpened their pencils and gone after e-com, and their fee structures can display that, and they're very, very competitive. And the express carriers are trying to figure out how to be competitive in that space. And they can do a pretty good job. We've seen some really good programs coming out of the express carriers, especially on the shipping rates. And then they get it. They're seeing this, and they're doing some things that are really helpful. But if you're a shipper, knowing how the game is played is really important. So that way, you know which service levels to use and which ones either to avoid or to negotiate heavily on the fee. So that way you can be competitive with them.
Okay. All right. Let's start with, sadly, I hate to pick on the egregious one. They're all egregious, by the way, in different ways. Mm-hmm. But let's start with UPS, because that prepayment fee, which is absurd, the duty and tax forwarding surcharge. First off, at Zonos, like if a customer comes to us to sign up, we will not sign them up if they have the $15 fee.
Yeah, this one,
like you have to get it waived.
This one just feels dirty to me. It's archaic and just needs to go away. It probably served a purpose years and years ago, and someone's emotionally attached to it. I don't know who, but it's.
Hopefully they're I don't know if I hope they're listening to the podcast or not.
Right.
But honestly, I think most of the people at UPS agree, right?
Absolutely.
Like that.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're a UPS sales rep trying to win e-com business,
and you're up against, let's say, FedEx.
It's a thorn in your side.
$15.
$15 if you're shipping from the US.
Yeah.
Which is not the worst offender, by the way.
Oh, really?
So I believe shipping from Australia is $30 Australian dollars.
Holy cow.
And here's the beauty of this. It gets charged on every single shipment. When you check the box to say bill duty and tax back to me or to Zonos, a third party, it charges every time your shipping charges.
So you send a $500 shipment from Australia to the U.S. De minimis is $800. They're going to charge $30, even though no duty and tax was due.
Correct, and it's going to show up on your shipping invoice. That's the weird thing about this one. So every other fee we're going to talk about.
Why not just raise the shipping prices because it's not always DDP, right? So,
right.
But that's essentially what these UPS is up against when they're up against FedEx or DHL, and this is why if you're a merchant, you get that waived. This is not competitive. Otherwise, they should just give you shipping rates that are like $15 higher and then waive it, right? If they actually want to make that money, because it's a very non-transparent way of increasing a cost in a way that's like really confusing.
Yep. And to touch on this, 2 years ago, if I go back more than 2 years ago, DHL had this fee as well, but they did not have a disbursement fee.
Right.
And so, but they recognize that, hey, this is not.
Right. They were charging it on the front end, not the back end.
And now they said, hey, we're going to flip this to be a disbursement fee and only charge it when duty and tax is due, which is a super smart move on their part.
Right. So they're still only charging one fee, but UPS is charging the duty and tax forwarding surcharge. And then it's actually, let's say it is DDP and it's going to Canada, there will be a disbursement fee.
On top of it. When that one only charges when duty and tax is assessed.
So that one into Canada, I believe, is if my information is correct here, it's about tell me is it about 3.7% of the duty tax amount or like 11 CAD in that range?
Yeah, depends on the service.
Express.
Yeah, so it's Express, I believe, is 11 CAD. Yep, and I think Ground's 7 CAD for the minimum. So the way the advancement fee works,
7 CAD,
and it makes sense. This is so I guess hold on, are we done with the duty and tax forwarding surcharge?
Yeah, they're the only one that has it. Okay, bucket
done.
1 gone. What? Check. Done.
Check it off. All right. So moving on to disbursement fees. This is where all three express carriers charge this now. Okay.
UPS calls it a
disbursement. FedEx used to call it advancement, but now it's they've changed their tune. It's also a disbursement.
Really?
Yeah. And then
I'm out of date. Okay.
And then DHL is a DTP fee.
Duty and taxes paid. Mm-hmm. Duty taxes paid fee. Okay.
Yep. And so what this fee is for outlaying the cash. So it is a percentage of the cash that they're outlaying. Makes sense, right? There's a cost to that, and the more cash you outlay, the more you're going to charge for the fee. However, they have a minimum charge. And for e-com, that minimum charge is usually what gets charged the large majority of the time, because usually the values aren't high enough to even for the percentage to exceed that amount. So your minimum charges vary by country, except for DHL. DHL is slightly different, but UPS and FedEx, let's just bucket those two together. It's the amount you get charged is going to be based on the destination country. So
UPS France, FedEx Egypt, UPS Canada.
Yep.
It's all going to be different based on the destination
Yep.
and in the destination currency.
Yeah. So, yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. So when it goes to UPS France is the one actually assessing that charge, and then it gets charged back through to us here in the US or whatever country you're in, but it gets assessed there in France, which also makes it taxable in many of these countries. And the other thing is, we're talking, if you go to 200 different countries, you got 200 different rates that could be charged. So it might be, in Canada, for example, it's either 7 or 11 CAD, depending on the service level. Australia, the minimum is like 21 Australian dollars.
For which carrier are you looking at?
That's a good question here. Right now, that's UPS.
Okay. What's like a FedEx? Do you have FedEx?
Let me, let's, which one you want?
Give me like a comparative example of a country with a UPS, FedEx, and DHL fee, even though DHL is static, right? So,
give me a country. What do you want?
Italy.
Italy. All right. You gonna buy a new handbag, or is that the plan here, or maybe some shoes? All right. So, UPS is. Hold on a second here. You're talking like DHL is going to be around €14.50 for the minimum, and you're usually around 2-3%. And let me. This is not as easy as I thought it would be to.
But I thought DHL, their fee was the same regardless of the country.
You're right.
So is that just when it's outbound out of?
Yeah, it's based on where it's
That's
billing.
if it's billing to Italy, it's $14.50. That's not
correct
for a U.S. retailer. That's not what it is.
Correct.
Because it depends.
And yes, correct. So sorry, we're talking just
that's okay.
UPS and FedEx here. €15 for UPS.
Okay. And regardless of origin, right? That's what's different with these guys versus DHL. Regardless of origin, coming from Egypt or whatever into Italy, UPS €15.
Yep. And then you're looking a little bit. You're right around the same price for FedEx.
Yeah, which is they're all pretty competitive, and UPS will waive that $15. So not to pick on them too much, they're willing to waive it, right? Mm-hmm. You do need some volume, but they'll waive the fee, and then it starts to become a little bit more of a level playing field.
Yep.
Would you say?
Yep. Yeah, and then absolutely.
Okay. For this fee, for the disbursement,
for this particular fee, it's tit for tat. Like one might be a little cheaper in one country and vice versa in another. DHL's the way they do it is it's the same fee no matter what country you're going to, and it's billing back to, like, let's say if it's billing to me in the US, it's going to be based on the US fee, which is a minimum of $17, which is pretty expensive. They'll work with you on it to a degree, but the other thing that's interesting about that, though, is because it's not being a service that's being rendered in that destination country, it's typically not taxed. So the way the landed cost treats it is actually slightly different depending on how that where and how that fee gets assessed.
Interesting. Now, with how we calculate it with our duty and tax guarantee, our landed cost guarantee, UPS FedEx depends on the destination. Make sure depends on our customer if they're on our updated pricing or anything else. We're going to charge $0.
Yep.
And again, that's not universal. There's a lot of circumstances there, but with UPS, going to be $0. FedEx, going to be $0. This is the disbursement fee. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that customer already has the $15 waiver, or else they probably wouldn't have signed up with us.
Only when it's going DDP.
This one, correct. Oh yeah, if it's going DDU, your consignee's getting slammed with the €15 or whatever in this example. But DHL, who usually is not that egregious on fees or anything, it's going to be $5. It's going to be $5 USD. Is going to be the charge for DHL. Yep. And it's not a fee that DHL usually negotiates, down that much. So I mean, there's as you're comparing shipping rates now at this point, you need to kind of take that into account that the fee with DHL might possibly be higher than, again, depends on a lot of circumstances, a lot. So everything depends on the destination, but generally that fee with DHL is going to be static and higher than the fees with a UPS or
So what you're saying
FedEx.
Is for our merchants that are using Zonos, if they're using the right product and the right and on the right pricing plan with us, they can greatly reduce their carrier fees.
Oh yeah. In fact, our services, we could offer Zonos for free and just arbitrage the fees. right? Like we could just say, we're free. We're just going to charge what the published fees are, right? So we are saving just by turning on a program with Zonos with our landed cost guarantee, pretty much just by discounting those fees. Again, it depends on the value and a lot of other factors, but you're going to save enough to where Zonos is paying for itself, right? Because, we charge a flat amount per shipment plus a percentage of the duty and tax, and it's nowhere near what some of these fees are that are just kind of crazy. So yeah, you're accurate. All right. Disbursement advancement fees. Maybe before we move to some other buckets, because I want to stick on this one. What about this seems pretty uniform when it's going into a country like Canada or France or Italy. What happens when it's going to a country where they are not doing the clearance? Would you, let's say, like sometimes we see this with Egypt or would you put this under the complex entry?
I put it in brokerage, actually.
Oh, okay. Let's go to brokerage then. All right. So disbursement fees, that's interesting. I'm excited to talk about that. So disbursement fees, think we're good?
Yeah, I think we're good. And we talked about the non-express carriers with that, how there's this pretty minimal. I think we've covered advancement fees pretty well. One thing to note, let's go back to a DDU/DAP shipment on this is they're still charging these advancement fees, and they're usually as much or more than the DDP advancement fees. They're still fronting the money, and now they're collecting from the consignee. There's just no discount whatsoever.
Maybe then before we jump to brokers, let's talk about the COD fee, right? So they're still going to charge it if it's DAP. What is DAP? Okay, let's make sure the audience
delivered
understands.
at place, but
delivered at place, delivery, deliver duty unpaid, right? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Delivery duty unpaid. So these are Incoterms, right? That are basically saying duties and tax are going to be collected upon delivery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now they're going to get collected on delivery. Now a COD fee, collect on delivery fee, right? This is because, and there is effort to do this. There's no doubt. I mean, this is sometimes getting collected at the door, or they've had to, make some phone calls or send letters or hold the package. Like there's a lot of costs associated with collection. So if it goes duties and taxes unpaid and they're going to collect on delivery, they're still going to get the disbursement fee, which we just talked about. Sorry, we can't help you with that, audience. But the COD fee, the person's how much do those usually range at?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let me
here. I came prepared with a little bit here.
Please,
I'm going to give an example to Canada. Okay, so the COD fee into Canada is basically it's the same whether it's air or ground. It doesn't matter. So, UPS is actually not too bad here. They charge a $5 ICOD fee, which stands for somewhere. Okay, we have a blog post on this. Okay, I'm going to share the blog post. We'll put it in the notes, but you can read about it. But I believe it's still $5. This might need to get updated a little bit. It's a $5 ICOD fee. FedEx has a $10 ROD fee, which is a COD fee, but they call it's ROD. I know it's somewhere in here. I've got to look. I can't. I know I define it somewhere. No, I do not.
I got one here in Switzerland.
And then DHL Express charges $5.25. So UPS and DHL are about the same, $5.
That's
and
not
then
bad.
FedEx charges $10.
That's actually
This is
really
Canada.
reasonable
Okay.
compared to some of these other ones I'm looking at.
All right. Okay. I'd love to hear them.
How about over $31 in Swiss francs?
Are you kidding me?
No.
With what carrier?
That was UPS.
Well,
but
the other ones are very similar.
Yeah,
because
it's all going to be the same thing. Yeah.
They're usually kind of pricing similar to market.
Well, and you can throw the postal clearance fees into the same bucket. I see one here that's €44.
44 euro?
Mm-hmm.
Where?
That one was. This one's not telling me which country that one is.
So
but yeah.
Hey, I'm going to go build my own DDP product, right? That goes out, I'll collect duties and taxes. Look, I'm just going to have, do some rough guesses on how much duty and tax is going to be. And I start shipping everything DDP and I'm getting nailed with all these fees, right? And again, back to Zonos, like we'll just, most of these fees, depending on the country, like if we can get it waived, we will pass that to you.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that we're trying to be transparent.
Yes.
Right. You see what our fee is and we'll see where we'll show you where we waive the carrier fees instead of blending it all in. It'll show you, but the net result is good, right?
Our mission is create trust in global trade. And we had another podcast where we talked about like postal into Canada, right? So, and from any destination. And we're so transparent that we will calculate zero, even though it's not supposed to be zero, but we know that's what
in practice, that's what's going to happen.
Yep. Customs Border Services Agency is going to do in practice. So what we try to do is in practice, and then we want to be transparent. Like, heck yeah, we're going to make money, but we'll tell you what we're going to make. You'll see it. And we'll give you all that detail so that when you get a customer service inquiry, you can, actually answer how this all got calculated. But anyway, I can't,
Yeah. Well, and I think it's just to kind of touch on the DDU shipments and why it's important to understand that and contrast that with the DDP. Our most loyal customers and the easiest customers to pitch on Zonos and getting moved over are those that win it alone and did DDU to start with. And there's no wonder that customers are refusing packages because the sticker shock is massive when all of these fees get added onto the duty and tax. And so they don't want the customers making a buying decision when that package is already on the other side of the world. They want to be able to show them everything at checkout. And the beauty is they can show them a cheaper rate at checkout than what they would have got at delivery. And they can make that buying decision at the time of checkout.
So if this was I'm still just stuck on that 44 euros. You have that's just the COD fee. You have a shipment going to this European country destination that is going to charge, let's say it's 20%, 21% VAT or something. Say this is 100 euros. So $21 in VAT under the duty de minimis. So it's just 21 in VAT. Okay. They're going to add on top of that the disbursement fee, which is probably about 15 euro, depending on the destination, and a 44 euro COD fee collection.
Finland, by the way.
Oh,
that's where that was going.
Okay. Finland. So Finland, this carrier, right, whether it's UPS or FedEx or whatever, is going to collect $21 in VAT and $60 in fees. Mm-hmm. 60 euro in fees, 20 in VAT. Oh, I'm sorry, it would not be 21 in VAT because now the VAT is going to be charged on the 60, right? They charge both those VAT on both those fees, of course. VAT gets charged on everything. So another 21%. Another 21% VAT on. Oh, I don't know what Finland's VAT is. Maybe it's got to be in that range. They're all kind of in that area. So, okay, that's crazy. Okay, COD fees, check. A currency conversion fee. And this is going to get charged too, even on the same example we gave. So I actually didn't add up the totals properly because, man, we got some, no, because if that's the currency conversion fee. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Does that only get charged when the duties and taxes are getting billed back to the origin country? Yeah.
So all the duty and tax is going to be assessed in the local currency of the destination country.
Right. So they'll take
if it bills
the commercial invoice in USD or in euro, and depending on where it's going to Canada, they'll convert it into CAD.
Yep. And it'll range from 0.75% to 2.3%, depending on what currencies it's converting between.
Of the duty and tax amount.
Whatever the bill is. Whatever the duty and tax bill is going to be.
We have some FX risk in here. It can get up to 3%.
Yep.
And this is a fee we also pass along to, our customers. I mean, that's one that
yeah, and here's the interesting thing about it. FedEx and UPS are the ones that we see this with. But it's not detailed out. If you dig deep into the terms and conditions of the the agreement and their pricing, you can find them. But when you look at your duty and tax invoice, it's not there. In fact, I'm on one. This was years ago. I remember looking at it, and it would show on the invoice the foreign currency in the destination country and give an exchange rate. And then when you do the math, it doesn't equal what was being billed because it was just buried in there. And so it's not obvious. In fact, most carrier reps don't even know it exists, but it's there.
Yep. Oh man. So what about consolidators? Is there usually a currency?
You usually don't see that. I haven't really seen it with DHL. If it's there, haven't found it yet.
All right. So yeah. There's a plus for DHL on the on the foreign exchange.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Brokerage fees.
Brokerage fees. All right. So this is just the cost of clearing the shipment, right? Let's talk about the easy one.
Yep. The obvious one.
The express carriers, the express services, they don't charge them. It's all baked into the shipping cost.
When I worked at, DHL, UPS, I'm a sales rep. I would always go and say, and I'd be like, all of our services are brokerage inclusive. At first I said that, right? All right. I didn't say that after I learned a little more, but I would say, yeah, it's inclusive of brokerage.
Yep. So on the whole, I think people in e-commerce are used to that. Your consolidators and those outside of the express carriers, same model for the most part. Within the express carriers, though, there is certain service levels that are not brokerage inclusive. So this is where it gets a little dangerous sometimes. I've seen a number of customers, especially here in the U.S., that are shipping ground services to Canada with both FedEx and UPS.
And they're choosing ground because
the shipping rate looks great.
Oh, yeah.
And then the brokerage fee comes in, it gets charged separately because it's not part of the shipping costs. And those brokerage costs are not cheap. And keep in mind, when it's a DDU shipment, these brokerage charges are also being collected from the recipient. So it turns into a horrible, horrible customer experience. But just to give you an idea on those, so I'm going to do the heavy hitting ones that's really relevant. And I think you get the same thing with certain ground services in other parts of the world as well. But I want to talk specifically about US to Canada. But it's like UPS calls it, they call it an entry preparation fee. Okay. At a minimum, if it's duty and tax free, cool. There's no fee. Once you hit
under 40 CAD,
once you hit 40 CAD, it's $18.45 in CAD.
For the brokerage fee,
just the brokerage fee,
and then the disbursement fee.
And this is taxable, by the way. But then it goes up. It's tiered based on the value of the shipment.
Oh.
And so it'll go to 22 CAD. So this is a 40 to 60 CAD shipment is 1845. If it's 60 to 100, it's 22 CAD. All the way up to like if it's a 200 CAD, 150 to 200 CAD shipment's $33. And then it jumps. Once it's over 200 CAD, the value of the shipment, it jumps from 33 to 63 CAD. And then FedEx, if you look at theirs, very similar. FedEx is actually a little bit cheaper, but
that's relative, right? I mean, it's still extremely expensive.
I mean, it starts,
and then they're getting hit with the disbursement fee on top of this, which can be, 10 CAD or more, right? Like it's
and if you're UPS, you also get hit with that duty and tax
40 surcharge. So $15.
$15
plus the.
Hey, let's just say you do a 50 CAD shipment. What's the value of that? In US, probably like 30,
35
something.
Maybe? I don't know.
So we're talking
37.
Really inexpensive, but really low cost shipment. And you think, I'm going to send it UPS ground. We're going to add $15. And then you're going to add $18.45 for brokerage. And then you're going to add in the disbursement, which is 11 CAD. Do the math on that. So we're talking about 30, 45 plus foreign exchange fee. It's pretty cheap. UPS like 0.75%. So yeah, you're almost, I didn't put in the tax, but you're almost at $50 just in fees. Yeah. So UPS ground can be and FedEx ground can be really good service levels, but you've got to understand what you're working with.
So the message to the average seller out there is, if you do not have this figured out, you should not first off, never send anything, duties and taxes unpaid, to Canada ground with UPS or FedEx. I mean, the rejection rate will be through the roof.
Yeah,
you think absolutely. You're doing unless you're there just to screw your customer and you're okay with package abandonment, you're going to get hosed.
Yep.
And then if you're going to duties and taxes paid, the other message is, you better be prepared to at that point lose every single sell at checkout, because the calculation will be so high. And again, we have a lot of these things negotiated if things are going through our guarantee, but it's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy.
And I think look, we're talking really specific about B2C shipments right The ground shipments, if you're in business sending B2B, UPS ground and FedEx ground is phenomenal service.
Right. But I mean, if it's higher value, yes.
If it's higher value, and also in Canada, you can choose your own brokerage, and the business you're sending to might want to
they might be using a different broker anyway.
Avoid these fees, and so there's definitely a place in the market for it. But if you want to use it B2C, it still can be relevant. You just got to understand it and be able to get those fees, accounted for and negotiated in a way that it makes it competitive.
Man, okay.
But
there's other brokerage fees, right? That was the simple one.
That's the published ones.
Okay.
So let's go back
Meaning publish, you can find it on the web.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the rate and service guide. It's all there. But then there's a dirty little secrets that the carriers, honestly, most people that work for these carriers don't even know.
No, they have no
exist.
idea.
No idea.
No.
There's some people, were selling as a rep, you say, it's brokerage inclusive, right?
Inclusive, yeah.
I call BS. Okay. But it's no fault. No one's trying to be, dishonest with this all. It's just the nature of the business and the way they work this. The networks for these carriers, and this isn't just express carriers. I've seen this with non-express carriers too, where they outsource to a third party, honestly, probably an express carrier or the same brokerage company that an express carrier is using, which is, hey, I'm going into this less common lane for my business. Let's call it Egypt or Israel or something else, right? And they don't want to manage the clearance themselves. They just want to hire a third party.
Well, and sometimes I actually think you can't manage it. Like I think India is an example where I could be wrong, but India or a country like this where legally you cannot be the broker. It has to be a different, so the carrier can't even be the broker.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, serious. Like you, on the law on the books is that this has to be, the broker cannot be the carrier. So that would be another reason.
Interesting. Yeah. So what happens is they hire it out to a third party. That third party clears it, assesses the duty and tax, plus their own brokerage fees. And then they bill that back to the carrier, who turns around and passes that back on to you as a shipper. And guess what you just paid? Brokerage fees.
Brokerage fee on a shipment into Egypt. And we've seen
was that brokerage inclusive?
Yeah, no. But your contract might have said that, or Zonos, right? You're with us. We're like, hey, we might be able to waive your brokerage, but to Egypt, let's say, nope, sorry, like that is out of our control. We're going to bill back what is actually happening. Better said, bill back is not the right word. We will calculate it correctly in the first place.
Yes.
And then deal with the consequences of it getting billed back to us at a later date, because it is a mess.
Yep. And these are fees, honestly, we have to find through experience. And we don't get the information. I can't just call up a FedEx or UPS or DHL rep and say, hey, what's going on here? They'll have no idea. We have to look at the invoices and the clearance docs and get with whatever that third party is in that country to get to the details of how these fees work. And it's, honestly, it's the biggest part of our landed cost that takes the most work, is to figure out things like this. Yeah. But it's also extremely valuable. And
look,
and very relevant.
I think I saw a write-up you had on, was it the Philippines or something? And you were like, it was like this super long document. At the end, you're like, we'll deal with this later.
Yeah. There are certain things that's like, hey,
you can, there are some that are just so complex and not consistent.
Yep.
But again, our goal is to try to, be as transparent as possible at calculating that correctly up front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're on the hook, right? When people are part of when we're guaranteeing the landed cost, we're on the hook. And so, but we usually like to wait till we see a pattern.
Yeah.
And then we'll introduce a new fee when there's a pattern in play. But yeah, brokerage fees are super relevant, even in the express services that are brokerage inclusive.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Okay, I love this. This is great stuff. Okay, so we have two left. Let's talk about complex entry.
Okay.
Okay, because this was all like non-complex. We're talking T-shirts, $100, $200.
Yeah. So, look, there's different service fees that vary. I don't have all those off the top of my head as far as like, hey, if I need to go to an other government agency and get them involved, they'll usually charge a $10 or $20 fee for just a service.
Fish and wildlife or
those are pretty, those come up infrequently.
Right. Agriculture, whatever. Yeah.
The one that's, I'd say the most common when it gets assessed is the additional tariff line fee. So if you think about like when you fill out the documentation for an international shipment, you're filling out a commercial invoice and you're putting the commodities that are in the box, right?
Yep.
And each one of those is a line. So if you have 50 T-shirts and you put T-shirts all made in China, HS code 610910,
There's 50 of them.
50 of them. That's one line.
That's one line.
It's all in one line.
Yeah, because it fit literally on one line.
And if you're clearing it, it's like as a broker, it's like, oh, easy, one line to work with. Once those lines get down above 5 or so, it's typically over 5. So what they do is they'll give you up to 5.
We're still usually express carriers, right? It's usually
yes.
Yeah.
Once you go over 5, they can now start charging you a fee per line.
That can't be that much, right? So okay. What if I have 20 lines? And this is also country specific.
Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? And again, the fees on this are all over the map, and it's dependent on the destination country. So it's
Ireland.
Oh man, okay.
Are they gonna be a hard one? Is that too hard?
I don't know. I just got to find it here.
You can do Canada.
Let's just. I got Canada's right at the top of my list. 5 CAD per line.
Holy cow.
Australia, 420 per line. New Zealand, 430 per line. Norway, 83 NOK per line. 825 euro per line to Portugal.
€825.
950 euro per line to Hungary. Some of them are absolutely asinine.
Okay.
So
I mean, these are almost so bad. I know we're bucketing this under complex entry, but it almost needs its own. It's so terrible. Just called line item fees.
Yeah.
But this really impacts companies that have a lot of SKUs, multi-line orders,
big orders. So most e-commerce merchants don't deal with this.
Right.
It's ones if you're selling, auto parts or some type of product where people when they order, they like to order lots of things. Then this is something that's really relevant, and you can negotiate this with the carriers and get that rate down if it is relevant to you.
But it's a country specific thing, right? So that,
but you can still get a discount.
Okay, that's good.
It'll apply kind of like the disbursement fees is country specific, but you can get it in your contract to have it reduced.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very relevant. When for particular merchants,
so line item fees is one of these under the complex entry bucket. What else?
Those other government agency fees.
Would you call storage fees kind of in that bucket
storage fees
too?
We can throw in there if if it gets held up.
Yeah.
Yep, and it's not getting cleared, and they're holding onto the package. They'll charge that.
What about like a commodity like tobacco or something else like that kind of stuff? Will get hit.
Yep, that would all get hit with some extra fees because usually other government agencies get involved.
Right.
High value shipments would typically get hit with something as well. Because the low value shipments, there's some simplified processes that can usually be in play, but when you're high value, then you can't. So, those all kind of go into a big bucket of stuff that happens on certain shipments.
Okay, country fees. Okay, so this is our final bucket of the day.
Sweet. Of
just fees. Countries are charging fees too. But wait, no, I thought they charged tax and duty. Wasn't that it?
No, they charge lots of fees too. Most times you don't see this. In kind of a lot of your main countries, you don't see a lot of extra fees per se on normal shipments. However, one big one would be going into Australia or New Zealand. Both of them, if you have a shipment over 1,000 Australian or New Zealand dollars, they have their declaration charge, import processing fees that are all actually government fees. So it doesn't matter what carrier you're shipping with, you're going to get hit with those. And so we're talking, let's see, Australia, you're a combination on a lower value shipment. Unless it goes over 10,000 Australian dollars, you're 93 AUD in addition to your duty and tax.
Man, that's like 10% if you're at 1,000 CAD,
Yeah.
1,000 AUD.
Yeah. And if you have a crazy high, which you're not typically going to see in e-com, it's going to actually be about 200, almost 200 AUD.
Man,
in those fees.
Now, I thought it was a biohazard fee.
That's New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
So New Zealand is they call it a biosystem entry levy, and then they have an import entry transaction fee. Both of those, you're about 60 New Zealand dollars combined between those two. And then look, I'll just go back to my old job too. There sometimes can be a quarantine fee if you don't do your documentation right. So I would see that I was shipping tires into Australia, and I had to put a declaration on there that these were stored undercover, free of mosquito larvae, et cetera, et cetera. Otherwise, if I didn't, they would actually quarantine them and charge an extra fee for that.
Wow.
So,
okay. So pretty easy to create a calculator that does all this stuff,
absolutely.
Right? This wasn't even duty. This wasn't even tax. So
no.
And like you said, I think this is important. One of the things that is extremely unique about Zonos is we are agnostic. We're carrier agnostic, and it has forced us to learn how everybody does this because
absolutely
the merchants that use us are using the carrier that best suits them, whether for whatever reason, or a combination of carriers, right? And we need to calculate what the true total landed cost is in order for them to do that. And so we see everything and have gotten extremely good at not just calculating the duty and the tax, but fees, right? And this is, and it's hard, right? Like you know, you're at checkout. Like, how do you display this to a shopper that it's $21 in VAT and like $80 in fees? You know, I mean, it's just crazy. And this is where, I mean, we can help with a lot of these things to make sure that you're choosing the right service levels, using the right carriers. I mean, we're not that much involved in that, but at least calculating, right? So maybe we can kind of end on that. What's a company out there going to do that, like, they specialize? This isn't really what we do, but in selecting the most cheapest service level, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's where,
like, let's keep the.
It's extremely relevant nowadays to use technology to help you pick the cheapest way to ship a package, right?
For the same amount of transit time, right? Like, I wanted to get it.
My customer's expectation is
usually
X.
in the U.S., like, I want to get it to California in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the cheapest?
Right.
Whether it's ground, air, USPS, UPS, whatever.
Yeah, and I have experience with this. The system I worked with in the past would rate shop it. When that label was being created, it would say, okay, the expectation was 2 days.
Yeah.
And then it would say it might be an express service, so to speak, right? But then we realized it's only going to California.
Yep.
And it's within 2 days of ground, and I can save X number of dollars by going ground. It'll flip it to ground, right? Or flip it to a postal service, or it just rate shop amongst multiple service levels and carriers and pick the cheapest one that can still meet customer expectations. Those systems are only looking at the transportation costs, and that's it.
Which theoretically kind of works if you're sending it DDU, even though you're not actually helping the shopper, but you're helping the seller, right? The shipper. The shipper is able to at least charge the least amount in shipping costs. And then, so what if they got hit with 44 in euros in a COD fee into, was that Finland?
Yeah.
Crazy. So what, right? Like, even though it was more expensive to ship it that way, but for the shipper, it wasn't. But if it's DDP, how are they going to do this?
Right. The only way to do it is you have to take into account the transportation costs and all the other pieces of the landed costs, the duty and tax, and any other fees associated with each individual service level. And that's
you almost have to blend it together, right? The total,
absolutely,
the total, including the tax, including the duty, including the fees, to really properly shop, if that's what they're doing, right? The most appropriate service to use at checkout or at time of shipping or whatever.
Yeah. And so, for example, I want to ship something to Canada. Now, a ground service, and let's say it's a heavier item, ground service might be really aggressive on the transportation, and a normal rate shopping system would just pick that and ignore all the brokerage fees and everything else that's going to come into play. But if you blend that transportation cost with our landed cost that takes into account all the actual fees, it would now be comparing the true cost of that shipment shipping, duty, tax, fees together with against maybe an express service or some other service. And now you're comparing those costs and picking the cheapest one overall and not just the cheapest transportation.
Yeah. So very relevant for like a 3PL.
Absolutely.
Extremely relevant
Massive.
for a 3PL. Possibly a label, a shipping, shipping platform that
shipping
does,
platform. Any of these providers
labels,
that are
trying to surface up the best price. What we're going to do if and which is good when they're shopping at that end, right? If they want to do that, great. But regardless, but this is more, depends on what kind of experience you want for your shopper. You can show a bunch of different service levels and let the shopper make that decision at checkout, right? And so a lot of customers use us for that, where we're going to calculate the right total cost, and then the shopper can pick, which then drives the service level at time of shipping. So there's different ways to skin this cat, but for sure, if this decision was not made at checkout by a shopper and it's being made by a rate shopping platform that's telling you that, hey, we're going to pick the cheapest method, and you're doing DDP, careful, because it might not actually be might actually be the service that they're claiming it's going to be.
Right.
And a lot of it not
unless they're partnered with us.
Boom. Okay. Well, thank you. Wow. I don't know how long we talked about fees, but this was one of the topics I've been most excited about talking about because, like I said at the beginning, we've dealt with it for a long time. We're dealing with it every single day, and looking forward to the next podcast where we get to decode more cross-border e-commerce. And see it.
And I think to wrap this up, Clint, let's go back to how we started this. How do carrier fees stay in shape? By running up the total cost.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay. All right. Appreciate everybody.